Tonight, 4 teenage paddleboarders found alive after they were swept from Rosebud to Queenscliff in the dark of night. A neo-Nazi thug salutes as he's found guilty of a brutal assault on a 9 security guard. Kevin Rudd goes to Washington. Anthony Albanese bestows a key role on the former PM. 6 hooligans still on the run after the mayhem at Amy Park, but police are closing in. Congress recommends criminal charges against Donald Trump, squarely blaming him for the Capitol insurrection. And Richmond locks in young gun Shea Bolton for 5 more years.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Alicia Loxley.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a Christmas miracle. 4 Glen Waverley teenagers have survived a terrifying ordeal, floating across Port Phillip Bay, clinging to 2 paddleboards. They were swept out by the tide and strong winds, but despite the choppy water and the surrounding darkness, they lived to tell the tale. Lana Murphy has more.
They were out of their depth, but blew everyone's expectations out of the water.
It's huge relief. We were very desperate.
Back on dry land with barely a scratch, 4 schoolmates are heading home after a terrifying night clinging to life, floating towards a much darker fate in the deep blue.
In the morning, we just honestly don't know whether they are still there.
The 18 and 19-year-olds were spending an afternoon at Rosebud Beach. They launched 2 blow-up paddleboards and instantly realised they'd made a mistake.
They are not a good swimmer. They can swim, but do not have the skill to swim in the bay.
They were swept from the sandbank into the depths of Port Phillip Bay, pushed by strong easterly winds. A passerby raised the alarm after finding their belongings on the beach around 8 p.m. The teenagers drifted in the cold and choppy water for at least 7 hours, clinging to the 2 boards in darkness. The tide pushed them for more than 20 kilometres, heading directly towards Bass Strait, before they washed up at Swan Island near Queenscliff at 2 a.m. That's where they found shelter in a hut. At daybreak, they wandered through the top-secret Defence Force training ground and were instantly spotted by security. Their distressed parents and relatives notified after 9 a.m.
I don't want to go through it again. Trust me.
Even on a picture-perfect day, the conditions in the middle of Port Phillip Bay can be treacherous. And police say the fact the teens were swept to land rather than through the heads comes down to nothing but luck.
All too often, members of Victoria Police in these circumstances see tragedy. Sensational outcome, but just to remind everybody, please, just about the dangers that our waterways pose, particularly over the summer period.
This Rosebud resident paddleboarding at the same time last night.
It was very choppy and the wind was very strong, so we got pushed out pretty far.
The locals know this could have been much worse.
The outgoing tide plus an easterly pushing towards the heads, the kids would have been blown quite easily towards Sorrento and Portsea.
But Mother Nature had other plans. Now 4 families have an unbelievable tale to tell over Christmas.
I would like to give out everything, just to get them back. Really happy.
And Lana is at Geelong Hospital tonight. Lana, how are the teens doing?
They are in extremely high spirits, Alicia, and how could they not be? The 2 females involved, well, they're already resting home at Melbourne. They've been discharged, while the 2 males, they remain here at Geelong Hospital awaiting the results of a blood test. Once that's done, they'll also be on the highway heading home. We've just seen their family walk in with a takeaway meal, so they're likely enjoying that tonight. We've been speaking to one of the boys involved this afternoon who says that they worked as a team. At no point did they panic, and they decided instead to get together and move with the current. What they're looking forward to is a pretty good excuse, Alicia, to get out of work in the next few days.
I think they've got one. All right, Lana, thank you very much. Neo-Nazi leader Thomas Sewell has been found guilty of a brutal attack on a Channel 9 security guard. A magistrate rejected the self-defence claim, declaring Sewell was itching for a fight. Adam Hegarty was in court.
Thomas Sewell looking every bit the neo-Nazi leader.
Why are you doing that, Thomas?
Leaving court, guilty as charged.
Your reaction to that decision?
At all times I acted with honour and defended the people that I cared about.
Is that salute honourable?
Absolutely, 100%.
Why is that?
It's a sign of honour.
Well, this, Magistrate Stephen Ballack has declared, was sustained and unjustified violence on a Channel 9 security guard after a despicable racial taunt.
Dance, monkey, dance.
Watch yourself, bro. I'm not a dance monkey.
March last year, Saul and a friend, Jacob Hersant, demanding to speak to journalists over an expose on the neo-Nazi group.
Were you itching for a fight?
No, absolutely not.
The judge says you were.
The judge perceives that. The judge is allowed to be wrong.
That judge concluding the security guard placed a hand on Hersant's shoulder, then a push after the taunt and repeated requests to leave Channel 9's Docklands headquarters. Saul now faces the prospect of jail, a maximum 5 years behind bars. He'll be sentenced here in the new year, but still insists it was all self-defence.
But does a hand on a shoulder and a push justify 6 punches to the head?
I stand 100% by my testimony that this individual grabbed my friend that I care about by the throat and tried to strangle them.
A claim the judge rejected. The footage, he says, speaks for itself. Adam Hegarty, 9 News.
Almost 24 fire crews are currently battling flames burning out of control in Melbourne's outer west. 23 vehicles are at the scene at Mount Cottrell near Deer Park, where the blaze is tearing through grassland. It's not yet known what ignited it. Former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd will be Australia's next ambassador to the United States. As Eddie Meyer explains, his appointment to the Plum Washington Post isn't without controversy.
He was once described by his own colleagues in less than flattering terms: a control freak, micromanager, even psychopathic narcissist. How times have changed.
Kevin Rudd will be seen in the United States as a very significant appointment by appointing a former Prime Minister.
This is really unprecedented. I can't think of a case of a former Prime Minister from almost any country who served as ambassador.
In a statement, Mr Rudd said he was honoured by the nomination at a time when Australia currently faces its most challenging security and diplomatic environment for many decades, adding he looked forward to continue strengthening the bonds between our two countries. Mr Rudd is noted for his expertise on China. Mike Green has worked in the White House and Pentagon and has known Kevin Rudd for more than 2 decades and says his broader knowledge of international affairs will be critical in navigating the AUKUS alliance.
There's a lot of meaty, tough stuff he's going to have to work on. China's the context, but the hard work's going to be in Washington on some of these bilateral issues.
Former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull refused to nominate Mr Rudd for the position of UN Secretary-General, a change of tone today on Twitter, saying he could not think of any Australian with better connections than Rudd has in the Biden administration or with more influence on geopolitical issues in DC. But Mr Rudd's past is nothing if not colourful: the leadership revolving door with Julia Gillard and a short fuse.
This language, he just complicates it so much.
The Prime Minister brushing all of that aside.
As someone who has the links with the global community based in Washington DC, will be a major asset in working to assist the Foreign Minister, as other ambassadors do in their job.
Kevin Rudd has lived and worked in the US for much of the past decade, building relationships with Democrats and Republicans, although just this February described former President Trump as a traitor to the West. Mike Green says that will have little impact in Washington, but
there are things as ambassador he won't be able to say anymore.
Also appointed today, respected former Chief Executive of the Australian Industry Group, Heather Ridout, as Consul General to New York, the first woman in that role. Eddie Meyer, 9 News.
Trumpets have sounded on Spring Street in a grand display of pomp and ceremony. State political reporter Mark Santomartino tells us the 60th Parliament of Victoria was officially opened this afternoon.
Rolling out the red carpet, on behalf of the King, Governor Linda Dessau welcomed every MP, soon summoned and huddled before her in Parliament's upper house. Energy, health, education, training and jobs declared Victoria's priorities over the next 4 years.
It's now my pleasure to wish you well and to declare open the 60th Parliament of Victoria.
Daniel Andrews led the applause, returning as Premier. Labor's Marie Edwards was renamed Speaker, while Sean Lean was announced President of Victoria's Upper House, where for the first time the legalised cannabis party holds not one, but 2 seats.
We received the highest vote outside of Labor, Liberal Coalition and the Greens.
In front of them on the crossbench, One Nation's Ricky Lee Tyrrell sat alone, but with support in the crowd.
Got enough lefties in the state. Let's get back to the Conservative side of politics.
Pauline Hanson unhappy with every option.
I think the Liberals would have been a better option down here.
Under Guy Matthews? No.
Guy Matthews.
Matthew, is it?
Yeah.
Right?
Matthew Guy's replacement, John Pursuto, tried making more of an impact, switching gears from health to electricity.
Can the Minister guarantee that energy prices will not rise further?
You might actually learn a few lessons from your failed privatisation agenda.
And with a commanding 56 seats in the lower house, one more than last time, Labor gleefully set its leaders up for a moment to gloat.
This was what was said in this place by the member for Caulfield, that the coming state election will be a referendum. Do you want a rail line from Cheltenham to Box Hill? Yeah. Well, guess what? I reckon the answer was yes.
And we won't waste a day.
And Mark joins me now from State Parliament. Mark, a huge number of overdue reports have been tabled.
Alicia, there's nothing like a bit of light reading over the Christmas and New Year's break, especially for those brand new MPs. This isn't one of those documents. It's a document listing every single document that was tabled just an hour ago, all 265 of them. It's a whopping number, and when they were all simultaneously put online, the public database crashed. It includes the likes of the annual reports for the CFA and Victoria's anti-corruption watchdog. Many of those were delayed due to either COVID or the state election, but given the proximity to the holidays, the opposition says it's a bad look for accountability and transparency. The Premier says they could have been delayed to February when Parliament will next sit, but he thought it was best that they're all made public as soon as possible. Alicia?
OK, Mark Santomartino, thank you. 5 violent hooligans who stormed the pitch at Amy Park continue to evade capture 3 days after that controversial Melbourne Derby brought the A-League into disrepute. Penelope Lish has the latest for us. Penny, have any more charges been laid?
Alicia, police say more charges are very likely. We saw 3 young men charged late yesterday. Today, police have managed to identify a further 5 people pictured during the pitch invasion on Saturday night. But they need the public's help to find another 5 men shown in these images caught up in that violence on Saturday night. Anyone who recognises them is being urged to come forward and assist with this ongoing investigation. Now, the violence saw 150 fans making it onto the ground. We, of course, saw a number of people injured, including Melbourne City goalkeeper Thomas Glover. Bottles were also hurled at responding police. Football Australia have been conducting their own investigation, and Melbourne Victory has until tomorrow morning to show cause as to why the club shouldn't face serious penalties for the supporters' behaviour, bringing the game into disrepute. Now, that could mean fines, a loss of competition points, or the players being forced to play with their fans completely locked out. Melbourne Victory say they will comply by the deadline of 9 a.m. tomorrow to show their cause. Football Australia will then await their decision, with Melbourne Victory due to play again on Monday. Alicia?
OK, Penny, thank you. Andrew Thorburn has reached a settlement with Essendon as the Bombers apologised for his dismissal as CEO. The 57-year-old was dumped by the